My ex and I divorced after 3 years of marriage. The first time I met my ex-wife was at a baking fest where she and her friends came to support one of the competitors, who was also her friend, and I happened to be her friend's cousin, the competitor. We got along well from that first night, but I didn't think we would see each other after that. Not until she coincidentally popped up on my Facebook's People You May Know, and I sent her a friend request. Luckily for both of us, she was online that evening, and she accepted my friend's request that night, and we started talking. From our conversation, I found out that she was a fresh college graduate, and she was job hunting at the moment, but she also worked part-time at a restaurant to pay her bills. I was into real estate myself, and my job required that I traveled almost all the time to check out clients' property and meet with clients who wanted to buy or sell too. I told her about myself too, and we seemed to get along. When we met, I had been single for more than 4 years, and was looking for a partner, possibly a life partner, but I wasn't looking for the kind of girl who would be with me just because I was doing well financially. I wanted someone who actually loved me, and because of that, I lied about a couple of things I told her while I talked that night. As time passed, we continued to hang out often whenever I was in town, and I fell in love with her as we continued to see each other, and in less than 3 months of always hanging out, I asked her out, and she said yes. It was after she said yes to me that I began to open up to her, and this was because I was getting more comfortable with her and being around her. Since I was always barely in town and rented a comfortable apartment, I asked her to move in with me so we could always be together, and she agreed. Right from when we started talking on Facebook, I told my best friend about her and how much I liked her, and he encouraged me to make things work out between us, which it did. And since I was only sometimes in town, I would ask him to occasionally stop by the house on his way back from work and check on her for me. She became my world, and I adored everything about her. Her smile was infectious, bringing life to every room she stepped into. Even my mom, who was selective regarding women, loved her at first sight. After searching for a job for a long time, she could not find one. I asked her to stop hunting and started giving her money monthly. It was equivalent to the salary she would get if she worked, and I even added bonuses every time she made me happy. So, all she did was stay home, hang out with her friends, or do whatever she wanted aside from working. Our intimate life was great, and it was really one of the things I loved about her. When we met new, we explored together, and she always had a way of driving me crazy in bed. While all this happened, I bragged about her to my best friend, and I kept telling him how lucky I was to have met the perfect woman. He even advised me to propose to her, since I was the only bachelor in our circle, and he helped me pick the perfect ring. My wife and I dated for a couple of years before I popped the question, and she said yes. We had a beautiful wedding, and for our honeymoon, we went to a tropical island she had always been crazy about. Our honeymoon was a gift from my fellow realtors, including my best friend, and it was just amazing. Before marriage, we had agreed to not have kids immediately, because I understood we would have to pause our lives for a while to raise a child, and I didn't want that. I wanted to enjoy myself with my wife before a child came, so we agreed to start having kids after 3 years, and after she continued taking her birth control pills. The first 2 years of our marriage were great, and I had the best memories from them. We did literally everything together when I was around. We ate, had baths, shopped, and took trips together. We even learned new skills and did our first skydiving together. I ensured that whenever I was at home with my ex-wife, I showered her with gifts and so much love, and we would even go over to my best friend's house for dinner, or he would come over with his family. I loved that the relationship between my wife and best friend was getting more solid, and I loved to see them get along with each other, just like the big happy family I wanted us to be. I also loved that my best friend's wife and my wife were always together, and they did most of their shopping together. The only difference between me and my best friend was that he stayed out late, and his wife began to suspect that he was seeing someone because he began to neglect her, and he was always on his phone. I didn't really think my best friend was seeing anyone because being a realtor required that he meet all kinds of people, including women. I didn't even ask him about it because I'd been with him since we were children, and I knew he was a one-woman man. Everything was going fine between our two families until one day, my ex-wife and I were at this rich folks party I was invited to, and unfortunately, my battery died there. I had to make an important call for a deal I was about to seal, so I asked my ex-wife to lend me her phone, and she did. She was busy talking to people at the party, so she didn't even notice when I walked to a quiet place. I typed the number on her phone, and to my greatest surprise, the name Sugar popped on her screen. Funnily enough, it was my best friend's number, which made me curious. I knew it was weird for her to save his number that way. Many thoughts ran through my head at that moment, and I was forced to go through her WhatsApp after struggling internally for minutes. I found texts like "I miss you" and "I had fun the last time," which made things more suspicious. After I saw my best friend's number saved as Sugar in my ex-wife's phone, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was happening between them. She was always talking about him, and even when I told her that his wife suspected she was seeing someone, she acted very concerned and kept asking if she knew who the person was. I also wanted to prove myself wrong, so I hired a private investigator to follow her around. In the end, the private investigator followed her for weeks, and indeed, my ex-wife was having an affair with my best friend. The private investigator took pictures of them hanging out at night whenever I traveled. I was always traveling. They went to the movies together, cuddled each other in restaurants, and even spent nights in a hotel. Then he would drop my wife and return back to his wife. I was literally in tears when I saw the pictures and the videos. It was the height of betrayal any man could take. There was nothing I didn't do to make my wife happy, but she betrayed me. So, a few days after I learned the truth, I pretended to travel out of town and notified them about it. I knew they would hang out together that night, and they did. That evening, I waited in the PI's car and watched them as they returned from grocery shopping and walked into my house. I waited for almost 30 minutes outside before I ran into my house. I opened the door, and we caught them on the couch naked. The PI was with me, and he had his phone camera on. When they saw us, they scrambled for their clothes first, and then my ex-wife began to. Everything happened so fast, and I couldn't help but punch my best friend in the face. At the same time, my best friend's wife walked in on us fighting, and she began to yell at him and hit him when she saw him naked. I told her everything I found on the phone before I went into my house and asked her to come over to my house if she wanted to see things for herself. I kicked my wife and best friend out of my house that night, and I posted the video of them I recorded on social media and tagged them. It went viral, but I didn't care. I also sent the video to my former mother-in-law, and she was so embarrassed and disappointed. I contacted a lawyer from the day the PI turned in the evidence, and he helped process the divorce papers, which we divorced months later. My best friend's wife also divorced my best friend, and she won custody of their kids. As a result of that, he became miserable and depressed. After our divorce, my ex-wife dropped by the house several times, begging that I take her back. She had obviously tasted suffering and realized how much I made life easier for her when she was with me. She admitted that they had been dating for almost 2 years, and she did it because my best friend told her I was cheating on her, but I wasn't buying any of her excuses. I threatened that she would pay me back every money she owed if she showed up again, and that was the last time I saw her. I stopped talking with my best friend, and we stopped doing business together. It has been years now, and I have moved on, but I don't think I'll have a best friend or a woman I can trust anytime soon. Opie, what your best friend and wife did to you is devastating. Such people should not be given second chances in your life. They were the two closest people in your life, yet they broke your trust and betrayed you in the worst possible way. I'm also glad you didn't ignore your wife and forgive your best friend, because that would be silly. He also contributed 100% to the betrayal, despite being your childhood friend. You did the right thing by cutting them off. You don't have to keep doing business with your best friend when you can do business with thousands of realtors. Thank you for sharing your story with us. I wish you all the best. Now let's move on to the second story for today. I, 28 male, and my ex-girlfriend, 25 female, were a typical example of two lovebirds. I am an Uber driver, and I have been driving for more than 6 years now. Through driving as a part-time job, I could assist myself financially through college and settle things in other areas of my life. My ex-girlfriend and I first met after she ordered a ride, and I was her driver. We only talked a little that day because I had a policy of not engaging young female customers. Otherwise, we would get too close, and they would always expect free rides. But later that night, after I got home and was cleaning my car, I discovered that she had forgotten one of those small-sized mail wallets in my car and had her ID in it. As soon as I saw her ID, I remembered her and called to tell her I found her wallet in my car. From how she responded, it was obvious that she had been looking for the wallet, and she asked if I could help her drop it at her house the next day, and she would pay for the ride. I agreed to that, and the next day, I drove down to her place and returned her wallet. It was late in the evening, and we talked over a can of beer. It was her way of saying thank you, but in the process of talking, we found out that we had so much in common, and I offered to be her personal driver just in case she needed to go somewhere. Long story short, from being her new personal driver, we slowly got closer to each other, and we started going on dates. We were both single at the time, so we didn't have any reason to hold back, and besides, we saw it as only getting to know each other and nothing more. But we didn't know that we would end up sharing the same bed a few times, and from there, we would be in a relationship. We dated for 4 years, and even before our relationship was 6 months old, I had known her parents and the rest of her family members, and she met mine too. Our families knew we were in a relationship, but they kicked against her moving in with me until we were officially married. So during our 4 years of being together, she could only spend the weekends and sleep over on some nights because her parents insisted that she live with them until I married her out of their home, so we had to respect that. Aside from getting her dream job, she got a promotion in less than 2 years of working with her organization, and this was great news for both of us. The only wrong side was that she had to handle more projects, and she had more workload than she used to. In her organization, there was this guy my ex-girlfriend used to talk about a lot. She talked about how intelligent he was, and how the organization was so proud of him after he sealed a mega deal, and all I can remember was that she was so happy when she found out she had been paired with him to work on the project they were assigned. About a month after she started working on this project with her partner, I noticed many things had changed between us. First, she was always too tired to go on a date with me or come over to see me at my apartment like we agreed to twice every week. Also, we used to video call each other every day while working. It either had to be during her break time or mine, but after the project began, she stopped taking my video calls. Instead, she would text back and tell me she was busy, and she would call me later, which she never did. When her attitude towards me kept getting worse, I felt it was because I had not made a move yet, especially since we had already dated for 4 years, so I bought a ring. I wanted to propose to her so she wouldn't feel I was unserious. I intended to propose to her on her 26th birthday, but I found something shocking a week before her birthday. On that day, a customer ordered a ride to a fancy restaurant, and after I dropped the customer at the location at around 8 p.m., I saw my ex-girlfriend and her colleague from work coming out of the restaurant with a takeout bag. She was holding the bag, and he wrapped his right arm around her waist like they were a couple, and I felt butterflies in my stomach. They did not see me, and I watched them as they hopped into his car, kissed each other after they got in, and drove away. Immediately they drove off, I followed them. He drove her to the parking lot of a hair salon. They stepped out and kissed, then she got into her car and went home. I was heartbroken, but I had to put myself together, and I could take pictures of them kissing from where I parked my car. After they left for their different destinations, I sat in my car and laughed. It was a combination of tears and laughter, but I laughed the most. I was so pained that she chose to cheat and threw away everything we suffered to build. I had sacrificed a lot of things for her, but it seemed like that wasn't enough for her. The following day was one of the days we agreed she would be sleeping over, and I called her to come over to my place because I needed someone to talk to. I told her I was depressed, and knowing that I had issues of depression in the past, she came over. Throughout that night, I kept brooding over what I had seen, but didn't confront her. Instead, I asked about her project and how everything was at work, as I always did. That night when she slept, I was able to unlock her phone and found chats between her and her colleague. There were chats of them saying things to themselves and even saying ill things about the company they worked for. The sweetest part was the chats contained their nudes, and I took screenshots of everything, sent them to my phone, then cleared the traces. Before she left for work the next day, I asked her if she could leave her new purse. I got it for her, so I could take it to the store and get the same one for my mom as her birthday gift, and she did. When she left for work, I printed many copies of the chat I took from her phone and went to the organization she worked for. Her colleagues already knew me, so they received me well. When I got there, they told me she was having a presentation, so I used the opportunity to share the chats with everyone, and they were all in shock. When she came out, she was concerned that everyone was glaring at her, and when I handed her a copy of the chat, she stood there dumbfounded. Without wasting time, I told her it was over, then asked her for her car key. I gave her my first car, and I walked out on everyone who gathered. She was very embarrassed, and she even tried to follow me. I was satisfied with her public humiliation, and I wanted her to have a taste of what it felt like to commit fully to something and have someone destroy it without thinking. She was eventually fired, as well as her lover, but he cut ties with her because he was already married, and he did not want her to ruin the rest of his life. When her parents found out what she had done, they were very disappointed, and they even tried to call me to work things out, but I blocked their numbers, including hers. I never saw her again, and I hope I never do. I still regret wasting my time, resources, love, and everything I did to make that relationship work. She hurt me so much, and up till now, I still struggle with the thought that every woman out there will treat me the same way she did. Opie, a woman who cheats on you once can cheat on you again, and if she could do this after 4 years of being in a relationship, imagine how much more after several years of marriage. Don't let anyone manipulate you into getting back with them. I am very proud of how you handled this situation. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened.